Hello everyone and welcome to the Chrissy B Show. Today we'll be talking about sibling rivalry. Now, a sibling's supposed to be like having a best friend for life. Some siblings are very close, some are indifferent to each other, and some just don't like or even hate each other. Some relationships are so unhealthy that it causes distress and even depression. Today we'll be talking to Jody Medland about his working relationship with his older brother, and also Holly Searle and her experience witnessing sibling rivalry between her two children. And we also have on parenting coach Sharon Lawton to give some advice if you have this issue going on under your own roof. Plus, I'll be giving you a few tips on what to do if you feel your sibling is being favoured over you. But first, let's go to the news with the lovely Helena Shard. Welcome to the show.
Chrissy.
How are you?
Good. You good?
I'm very well.
Lovely.
So, sibling rivalry. Do you have
Yes.
brothers and sisters?
I've got two half sisters, which is probably not quite the same because we didn't spend that much time together.
Did you not
but
grow
I
up in
did,
the same
no.
house?
But funnily enough, I was speaking to friends trying to find out about sibling rivalry with them.
Yeah.
And I suddenly remembered one occasion with one of my half sisters that I spent more time with, and in Cyprus. I used to travel to Cyprus and see her. She's not there anymore. But at one point, I could see her look in her face, and she was really angry for some reason. And she got a pin, and she kept on stabbing me with this pin.
No.
I love my sister. She's not really like that, but and it was just like this crazy nonsense. And thinking back now, she was jealous because I was getting attention over her. And the only thing I could do, which is completely out of my character, to stop her was to give her one big smack. And it stopped it. And
how old are you? Can I just make sure? How old are you at this point? We're not talking
we were
like
21. No. No, about 9 or something. And it just was. It was a very random thing that happened. But I can see back now.
You get on.
Yeah, very well. But I think that's quite typical of when there's some kind of like, someone's upset because they're not getting as much attention, or I think that's a common thing, which is quite unusual.
I mean, to be honest, I have an older sister, as you know, but I honestly don't remember. I mean, we had our spats and we had our little fights and everything, our little arguments that most siblings do, but I can't ever remember feeling any animosity towards her or jealous, and her with me as well.
Really? That's lovely.
I don't know why, because I was even talking to my mum about it the other day, because, we had some sort of other relatives that are sort of not talking to each other, brothers and sisters, and I said, I don't understand how with one family it's like this. For example, me and my sister very close, want the best for each other, would want to see each other doing well, and yet there's other brothers and sisters that don't like that. They they want to even see that their sibling down, which I really don't understand.
It's got a lot to do with upbringing. When I spoke to some friends, and they said a lot of it had actually come from their parents, who had actually caused some kind of conflict. Which is quite sad, because obviously you've got, as a child, you don't have the development brain of why you feel this way, so you have to be guided and taught really the things that you can and can't do, so you can't just attack each other. There has to be some kind of boundaries. And I don't know. I
just find it really strange when siblings, like, I know sometimes you don't get on and you have your little arguments, but I don't understand when you wish bad things on your own family member. I do not get that.
I suppose if you don't feel worthy, or you don't feel good enough as compared to, say, your sister or brother who's very bright, let's say, as compared to you that's not as bright, it's a frustration. So I can see, and I was reading, because I was doing some research and reading some stories, and I didn't realise how bad it really was and how it's taken into adulthood on occasion. But it tends to be, I think, after the age of 60 that people tend to really bond. And
after
anything.
60?
Yeah, 60, I know.
I'm too late by then.
That's not everybody, obviously. But I was thinking of just some different stories of different rivalry, going back to years and years ago, with different things. Like there's George VI. Obviously,
wow, you really did
go
back.
Yeah, I did. I was thinking about different things. George VI and Edward VIII. Edward VIII abdicated, and he was supposed to be king. He was the favoured, good-looking, charming, bright, eloquent, as George VI perceived it, king. He was supposed to be king. And then poor George VI, who had the stammer, who felt like an underdog, he was made to be king, and he felt like the whole public didn't want him to be king. And he really suffered, until the day he died, with the stress of it all. It almost killed him. But that was like a real you know, throughout his whole childhood to when he died, unfortunately.
It's
that was
hard,
one
isn't
thing.
it?
But then you've got the kind of sibling rivalry like Prince William and Prince Harry.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really, it's just sports that they have, you know, they want to win, but there's no animosity, because Prince Harry always felt sorry for William because he was going to be a future king, whereas he could just chill and be, you know, be himself. So that's a sort of relaxed.
Yeah, I think this is obviously something Sharon will help us with a bit later on, because obviously children are going to be different from one another, and some will have some strengths that the others don't have. Like in this case of my sister and myself, it's like she was always like the outgoing one, the popular one, the funny one. But I kind of admired that. I wanted to be like her. Not I wasn't sort of like, oh, go look at her, she's got everything. I wanted to be like her, and I was proud of her. So if we went out anywhere or anything, people noticed it.
Did she include you in
her? She did. I suppose
that's the difference, because normally there's resentment.
Because she'd always looked after me. It wasn't like, oh, you stupid little sister, get lost. You're you're tarnishing my image. It wasn't ever like that. So maybe it has a lot to do with the way she treated me as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Just thinking about my sister as well. Even the Queen, and when she was Princess Elizabeth, and her sister Margaret, Princess Margaret. They used to have fights, and the Queen is known for her famous left hook when there was complete frustration. And I think that sort of fighting thing's always there. Yeah. Some worse than others in some degrees. But I was reading up on some really upsetting stories actually.
Oh,
there was I didn't realise that Julia Roberts, who's obviously very happy and married, has 2 children, etc. But her sister, apparently her half sister, had a very upsetting upbringing, and felt that her mother and siblings didn't like her, and she's always the underdog, but she unfortunately took her life and left a really sad note, but was saying that Julia Roberts was awful to her. She was always saying she was so fat and ugly, and I mean, I think really
wasn't Julia Roberts the one that wasn't speaking to her father, or was that someone else? Am I getting mixed up?
I think that was somebody else.
Oh, someone else, okay.
So Angelina, anyway.
It was.
Angelina. But that's really sad, because I think that's really quite deep. That's depression, isn't it? Mental health further down the line.
Or if you think your own family has rejected you.
Yeah, so that's really sad. I mean, there's so many different. I was thinking about the Miliband's, David and Ed Miliband.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they were both going for, you know, obviously for Labour, and I think
they do with that?
David was going for Labour, wasn't he? And all of a sudden, Ed jumped on the bandwagon, and then he won. I think David went to America, so you don't know, but I'm sure it was complete fracas there. I'm sure. And the Venus and Serena Williams, they get on incredibly well.
That was a strange one. Yeah,
it's slightly different. I think that's.
I don't feel like they compete. I just always wonder, does one let the other one win? Do they talk before?
I don't know, but they really don't like playing against each other.
Can you
and
imagine?
in fact, if one of them wins, instead of feeling happy, they don't. So they each feel really. It's an odd feeling. So
that's how it's meant to be, I think.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
what's nice.
I do too.
Just wanting your sibling to do well, and
definitely. I mean, there's so many different ones. I'm trying to think now. I had to, you know, it's like you had a mind blank. Who else is there?
This is where you wish you had your iPad.
I know I haven't got my iPad. It's actually very bizarre. I always quite like it, because otherwise I'm sat here sort of like, you know, always trying to look for stories. But now and I can't think any. But no, there was other ones. But there were also not just. I mean, obviously there's celebrity, but I was just reading some stories about just people in general. And the animosity, the ones that I found quite intriguing were where the parents weren't there for the children. So what would happen is, you know, their first child, you know, this particular occasion, I think she was about 6, and then she had a sibling. And the mother just didn't want to look after the new child, and she felt really resentful, the 6-year-old, and she had to really look after the child. But instead of looking after the child, which she can't at that age, she used to beat her up and bully her, and the parents weren't there for her. So she, in time, got severely depressed and was really fearful, because she knew she needed to be looked after. And the only person was her sister, who was beating her up. And it was a really sad story. And they've only really just made up now, and they are 50-something, I think. But the sad thing is, they realised so late on in life that the whole animosity was caused by their mother, who wasn't being a true mother.
And sometimes they stir. Some people stir things. I don't know, because I know a particular someone. I won't say who it is.
Oh, go on.
But no, I can't, because I know them. She kind of stirs things up amongst the children. So she'll tell one of her children something, and then against the other one, and then they're not talking to each other, and actually nothing of what she's saying has actually been happening. She just kind of exaggerates things, and I'm thinking, why do you want your children at loggerheads? I don't get that. This is stuff I don't understand.
That's terrible, because what will happen, as it happened with these two children, they now don't speak to the parents at all.
Yeah.
Because they realise, so they've not spoken to their parents for like over 4 years, which is so sad.
It's
because you know, your parents aren't around forever.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's such a learning curve. I mean, I don't have children myself, but you just have to be there for them the whole way.
Yeah.
And it's the guidance and the boundaries and, you know, the praise that you've got to give to each child. They may have different strengths, but it's so important to give that.
Helena, thank you so much.
I was ready to keep going.
Were you? Oh,
that's really quite nice.
To stop now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, darling, and we'll
Thank
see you again next
See you
time.
next time.
Okay, so do stay tuned, because after the break, I'll be speaking to Jody Medland about his relationship with his older brother. So stay tuned.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to today's programme, where we're speaking all about sibling rivalry. Now, before we go to Jody Medland, our next guest, let's take a look back at a clip of when I interviewed identical twins to see what they had to say about sibling relationships. And here they are with me, Mehmet and Erdo. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, I've just about managed to tell them apart just because of a little mole on your face, Erdo. Although you've got one as well, Mehmet, but it's on the other side. So it is a little bit confusing, but I'm starting to tell you apart now. Okay, so first of all, tell us, what is it like to be identical twins?
It's amazing. I don't really know how to explain it. I would be lost without my twins, so something I've been used to all my life.
Yeah.
It's just basically having a best friend and someone who you do everything with, and someone who you trust 100%.
And someone who you can rely on as well, 100%.
Yeah. Now, when growing up, when you were both young, you're only 23 now, aren't you? Yeah, but when you were younger, a lot younger, did you have sort of any sort of difficulties with one another, like arguments and stuff like that?
Maybe it was just normal arguments, but we just argued over silly little things, really. Because we always share the same room as well, so we got to spend a lot of time together, so maybe it was due to that for why we was arguing sometimes.
Now, what would you say then to people that don't get along with their siblings? Because it's not a nice thing. It's great that the two of you get along.
Yeah, obviously I can't speak on behalf of everyone out there because I don't know everyone, but I think it really relates to their upbringings and maybe some people's gone through, parents that's gone through divorce and the kids had to go through that. I think you can't just blame someone for why they argue. There's always a reason behind it. So therefore, I think it does maybe help if someone went and saw their doctor and had a family counsellor or
that's true.
something in that to see if they could do something as a family to support everyone.
Because there is always hope, isn't it? Okay, so there we heard from the twins there. So now it's time to meet Jody. Hello, Jody.
Hello, Chrissy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Brilliant to have you on, because you've got quite a bit to say, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely...
You've been from a big family.
Big family. This is a topic that definitely interests me. I'm quite excited about the psychology between people anyway. I mean, I'm a writer, so I guess you're always looking for truth in what makes people act around each other differently, particularly with siblings, obviously, that is the case.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big family.
So how many are you? 6 of you?
6 of us altogether.
Okay, and where do you fall into?
I'm the baby.
The baby?
Yeah.
Oh. Is that pressure for you, or is it?
I think initially there was a lot of people didn't like me so much because I kind of got everything my own way. My parents were harder on, obviously. When children are new to you, it's a horrible thing, so I guess it's higher pressure. Whereas when it came to me, I couldn't do anything that they hadn't seen before, so I had a lot of freedom, a lot of leeway.
Okay.
And the older ones didn't really like that, so at first there was tension.
But in general, how did you get along with them?
I loved growing up as part of a big family, and particularly being the youngest. It meant whenever you went out, people kind of knew who you were, they were friendly to you, because they're friends of your sister or your brothers, so they know who you are already. Okay. So it's kind of nice that way, you feel protected. And yeah, it was definitely a pleasant experience. I think it was good.
But then there's one particular brother of yours.
Yes.
that where, not that you don't get along, but there are times when you kind of clash. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think it's an interesting thing. I was born in North Devon. We all grew up there. And myself and my brother Carl, we moved to London. So we're the two that live in the city. Everyone else is still kind of down southwest.
That sounds exciting, though, coming to London.
Definitely.
With your brother.
He's
supposed to be.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, definitely. And he's a bit older. He's like 14, 15 years older. So he moved quite a long time before I did. I was a lot younger. And probably by him moving, I kind of saw that there was more maybe to the world than just the town I grew up in.
Yeah.
So the fact I came to London was probably no coincidence. I saw someone do it and how much fun he was having here, and I think it really appealed to me then. But I think because he's a director, I'm a writer, so we both work in film, TV, because we have that similar passion, those similar traits, it's quite competitive between us.
When you say competitive,
Yeah.
is it like, would you say it's healthy competition, or are there times when it kind of gets a bit heated?
For me, it's great because it's always nice to have someone, if nothing else, it pushes you. When someone succeeds, it's great to have that passion for their success and to really celebrate it. But also it does make you have to knuckle down, you have to kind of keep up.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good feeling because it keeps you focused.
Okay.
So for me, I find it quite a rewarding relationship.
Have you ever been a bit jealous, would you say? Or has he been jealous of you?
I think both. I think both ways it's quite natural. Like I was saying, we do celebrate each other's successes.
Yeah.
But then a day later, after you've had the celebration, you want that kind of adulation in your work because you're in a similar field anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not that you're jealous towards your sibling as much as that it makes you aware you need to also kind of be on your game.
But there are times when you've thought that, it's better not to work together. Why is that?
Yeah, for a long time, because we are like chalk and cheese when it comes to making decisions. So even though he's a director, I'm a writer, we have attributes that really match. We did make a conscious decision quite a while ago, really not to work together because it is draining. It's very draining to actually work with a brother in what's already quite a high pressured job.
But do you think it's because maybe with a sibling you're sort of more, you don't sort of control maybe what you say as much as you would when you're working maybe with a work colleague or someone you don't know very well, so you just kind of say whatever you think rather than kind of measuring your words. Do you think it's maybe something to do with that?
Yeah, it's incredible because when I look at him, he's an absolute professional, the same as me, absolute professional. When we're working with other people, everything's fine. We never fall out with people. The minute one of us says something to the other one, it could just be good advice.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what the other one hears, because you see it as, why is my younger brother telling me what to do? Or for me, it's, why is he telling me, he knows I know this, why is he telling me? Like, why is he
pretend you don't know each other very
Exactly.
well.
So before you even know it, you're having some kind of argument that's based on something that happened 20 years ago. And it's not a good thing. You don't want people to see that. You don't want it to happen. And it's undoubtedly because you're siblings, because as professionals, you understand each other. So it's an interesting thing. But we did end up working together 2 years ago.
But you did something really good together, didn't you?
We did. Like I said,
it does work.
It does work. We made a film together in 2012. And it got released internationally. It's out there now for people to see, and it's nice to know that when we want to, we can do it to some success, and that's a good thing.
Is it worth the stress though?
Well, this is it. Like, even though we know we can do it, we still would think really long and hard about it, I think, just because it's a big emotional impact that you actually go through. And when you fall out, it's not like falling out with someone and it's forgotten the next day. When it's family, it's like an extra burden, something to get over.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting problem, I think.
Let me ask you this question. What do you admire about your brother?
What I admire about him definitely is the fact that he's someone that doesn't really care what anyone thinks, and he'll just do what he wants to do. And I think it was a huge trait to see when you're growing up, to see someone be that brave, that bold.
Yeah.
It really does. It has an influence on you, because when you have to make decisions, it's easier to make tough decisions when you know people can do it and it's fine, the world won't end. So definitely that about him is something I've always admired. Which is
I wish he was here as well, because I'd love to ask him the same question, but do you know what he loves about you? Or has he ever said?
I would love to know what he loves about me, actually. It's a shame he's not.
So since you've done that on TV, then he has to write in or something and let us know as well, because I'd be very interested in that.
Absolutely. Carl, send an email or
Please.
something. And
Because look what he said, something really nice about you.
well, yeah, of course.
What advice would you give maybe to siblings that don't get along?
I just think it's quite normal, I think, to have bigger clashes with brothers and sisters than anyone else, because you know each other so intimately.
Yeah.
But it's bound to happen, so I think you shouldn't have pressure on that. When there's a big fallout, it's fine. Just don't hold on to it. There are going to be hurdles. The important thing is, how do you move on?
It's a waste of time, isn't it, just to hold on to things for
I think
years.
so.
Yeah.
And especially as you get older and you see that some people, by not talking, they really, really miss out on a long, 10 years are lost and just over an argument. And you're like, why have you done that? You've missed out on so much with each other. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, okay. All right, but you're doing well. That's good. So, Jodie, you're going to stay with us.
I'd love to.
Because after the break, we're also going to be joined by Holly Searle, and she's going to be telling us about some difficulties that she has at home when her children don't get along. So, do join us after this.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to today's show, which is all about sibling rivalry. Now, before I speak to my next guest, let's take a look at these street chats and what the public had to say about the nicest thing that their brother or sister has ever done for them.
What's the nicest thing a sibling has said or done for you?
I think just my sibling lives over in Australia, and when I told her that I was coming home, she had the biggest smile on her face because she was so excited, and that for me is the nicest thing that she could have done, just to show how much she was looking forward to seeing me go home.
My brother and I didn't get on super well growing up. We argued a lot, and I just remember when I was in my final year at uni, he rang me to congratulate me on graduating, and for the first time as we were hanging up, just sort of quickly went, "Love you," and I just never forgot that, and he still does it now every time, and I don't speak to him that often on the phone, but he always says "love you" at the end, and I just remember the first time he did it.
Well, my brother, the one who bought me a ticket to come to UK.
My sister passed her theory driving test last week, and we took her out for dinner, and that's about.
Yeah, the nice thing is like you are never alone. You have always some people nice want to love you, you are. Yeah, I think it's there.
Okay, thanks very much. And now we're joined by Holly. Hello, my love.
Hi, Chrissy. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So now you're going to be telling us about your children, first of all.
Yeah.
So how old are they?
Okay, so my daughter's 26 and my son's 14. So.
Right. Okay, so when did you notice things kind of not going so well at home?
Well, I think, probably when obviously my daughter had me to herself for quite a long stretch of time. And then obviously when my son was born, that was like a big upheaval for everybody. And so obviously as the mother, you're kind of torn in between that, because you're thinking, well, I've already established a massive relationship with one person, and now I've got this child that, he needs looking after and everything.
Well, what was your daughter doing or saying where you could see that there was a bit of an issue?
Yeah, well, I think she she was just being a teenager at that point when she was growing up, but she kind of had that a little bit earlier, but not in a spiteful way or anything like that, she just kind of was getting on. But I feel a bit bad about that, because I feel that she kind of got a bit pushed out, so I guess... But
it's hard though, isn't it, as a mum, to sort of divide your attention in a sense?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You're not used to it, and then you've got... used to having one child and then all of a sudden there's another one.
Yeah, exactly. One that can do stuff for itself, and then you have another one that arrives that can't do anything. So you just definitely.
But did she not chip in to help you with your son?
She did. She was great. I mean, she was really good. But I think there were times when she still needed her mum, and she'd had all this time alone with me, and I think that she kind of felt a bit a bit marginalised at that point. But not. She never did anything spiteful. She never tried to give him away, to the postman or anything like that. And she was really helpful. But I think she also then kind of worked out that was my role now as well. So that was a good thing. Yeah.
So then what started happening between the two of them?
Well, I think the funny thing is, even as they've both got older and they've both had this different sort of relationship with me, even now, they'll be saying things like, well, you did this and Mum did that with you. And I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, you know, it's like, what do you do in that situation? And they just have these like petty sort of squabbles about things, and nothing really sort of too heavy, but you just feel kind of like, well, now I just let them get on with it, because I used to sort of say, now hold on a minute, you know, let's try and sort of sort this out. But now I just sort of think, you know what, I haven't got enough time in the day now. I've got too many other things to be getting on with. So, you know, just work it out of your system.
And do they work things out, or do they sort of not talk for a while? And
yeah, no, I think that they just, I think that they kind of do work it out, and then they just go off and do something else. It's more like a fine, and one goes off in one direction. But it's not, there's no malice intended, you know. It's like, well, fine, and they go off, and because they're just different characters, you know, but their main centralised thing is that they're both my children.
Okay. Now, how about you with your siblings? Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, like Jodie was saying earlier, like I'm not one of 6, but I'm one of 4 children. So
Still quite a big family, though.
Yeah, still quite a lot of children.
So how was that for you growing up?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, I was one of 3 initially, and then I've got a younger brother who's 17 years younger than me, so in a kind of strange sort of way as well. Yeah, so 3 of us were all very close together, and then we had a younger brother as well. So that was quite strange, you know, even though now, and I think in that instance, I was thinking about when my older brother he was like always, no, don't follow me about, do all of that. And then with my younger brothers, I was always, I'll look after you, you know, and kind of like...
Did that upset you though when that happened?
Yeah, I think so. But then I think there was always, you know, he was always smarter and, you know, able to do more things and, you know, and... But whatever, you know, I'm the only one that got the degree in the end and things like that. So I kind of won that one in the end. So, yeah, so there was kind of like a bit of competitiveness there. But it was always, and he was always kind of like a bit more niggly of me, where I was always quite quiet, and I'd be quite happy to just sort of go and, you know, do stuff on my own or whatever. And I don't kind of like injustice or anything like that. So when I had 2 younger brothers, I was like, okay, well, I'll bring you into the fold and, you know, make sure you're okay and look after you and everything. And, you know, because I didn't want them to feel the same way that I'd been left out, sort of thing. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering, because obviously that there was a big age gap between the siblings. I'm just wondering if it's just because maybe you didn't have as much in common, because obviously you're born in a sort of not completely different time, but there are a lot of changes within those 10, 14, 15 years.
Yeah, I
just wonder if that's got anything to do with it.
It's one of the most fascinating things, I think, is how much does it shape you, depending whether you're the oldest, the middle, the youngest child. It changes your view on the world, because you are treated differently naturally because of your placing. And I think that's really interesting. And you could ask me, or you could ask any of my other siblings what they think of my parents. My parents are the same people, but you're going to get 6 completely different answers. And I find that an incredible thing. It's something that's...
You really do your research, don't you?
No, not at all. It's just something...
I never thought of ever doing that, but it's quite interesting thing that you said.
But it is. I mean, it's so true, isn't it? And again, your view of your parents, what is it? And it changes over time, because you see these people just over a snapshot of time. You have a different perspective to what other people did. So...
Now, Holly, I'll ask you the same question, because obviously I know there's been a little bit of friction between you and your older brother, but what is it that you see in him that you admire?
Oh, with my older brother, I think that he kind of like had the capacity, well, he doesn't live in this country first of all, so I think to move your entire family to another part of the world and start again from scratch is like a really interesting, and I find that quite admirable that somebody would do something like that. I really do. And yeah, no, I just think that he did a really good thing like that, you know. He's not a bad person, he's just completely different from me. So.
When you both think about this particular sibling, do you find it quite hard to sort of see the good in them, or do you tend to sort of focus more on the issues that you've had, the negative stuff, or how do you normally think about them?
Okay, well, me personally, I just, we had a bit of a confrontation last year, so I don't, you know, it's not a big deal, but it's kind of, but that was to do with the relationship with one of our parents and our relationship or our necessity in that instance at that particular time. Yeah. And my brother always would be able to have more freedom when he would be in that situation, and I wouldn't. My expectation would be more of me to be looking after other people. So now I don't really sort of talk to him really, because we had a big sort of falling out about that.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Do you miss him?
No, not really, because I think, and also, I know that, sorry, that sounds really awful, doesn't it? But I think that when
maybe
somebody's...
you do deep down, you know.
Well, maybe, yeah, sometimes, because I mean, we're very close in age, so I always remember when we were growing up, not very far from here, funnily enough, and it was like we used to get up to all sorts of mischief in a different time and place and everything. And yeah, you kind of miss that closeness, but I don't know whether that's a romantic idea of, you know, the way things used to be, and, you know, because it's interesting what Jodie was saying, I think, because when you evolve and, you know, because you change, don't you, every 7 years as well, and so your parents must have been different at all different points as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think your relationship with your siblings is like that as well, so, yeah.
It's never too late.
No. Oh, no, I'm sure it'll be fine, yeah. It's okay. I'm sure
now, what would be the ideal situation for you in your house with your kids?
That they would say, "Oh, Mum, you're just like so wonderful, and thank you so much for taking care of us. And we realise, you know, how much stuff you did, and you know." But that one probably won't. They do say that. I mean, they do say things like,
kids don't sort of say sometimes, especially at teenagers. Because I was quite a nightmare when I was a teenager. It was only years later that I realised what a nightmare I was, and until this day, sometimes I say, "Oh, Mum, I'm so sorry about the way I used to be, and you were a great mum." And all these things I sort of only realised afterwards. But I went through such a selfish phase, like a phase where I didn't care about anyone at home, and I felt really bad for that at some point. But then, you know, I always tell my mum thank you for everything that she did, and my dad when he was alive. So I kind of made amends that way. So I'm sure sort of kids do think, even if like maybe, you know, even the parents do pass on, it's like they don't get a chance to say it, but they do come to a point where they do realise how much their parents meant to them.
Yeah, I think it's really lovely when you get to that point as well, when you're actually able to express to your parents that you understand what it took and you care about what it meant. And I mean, I was really lucky a few years ago to be able to be my dad's best man, because both my parents are remarried, and it was a really good opportunity just to say, actually, point out what he did do for me, because we had a bit of a fractious relationship when I was a teenager and we were living together, only because really I guess we were so similar. We were always in each other's way. I remember every morning getting ready, and in the kitchen we were always in the exact place the other one wanted to be, and there was that kind of like odd aggression, but that all disappears over time, and you just see really what they did do for you.
So all kids should show their appreciation at some point, as soon as possible, please, because you don't know how long you've got. All right, but do stay tuned. You're both going to stay with us, because after the break we have Sharon Lawton on, who's our parenting expert, so she's going to be giving some great advice.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back, everyone, to our show about sibling rivalry. And now we have parenting coach Sharon Lawton joining us. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, Chrissy.
It's so nice to have you back.
It's been too long.
I know it has, but you always give great advice, which is why we always like to invite you back on. So this is obviously maybe a subject that you do come across quite frequently in your work. So what advice can you give parents, especially that are going through this? They see their kids, you know, they've tried everything to bring them up, to love each other, to get along, but then they start noticing things not going so good.
I think, first of all, the first thing to remember is that sibling rivalry is probably something that happens in every family to a greater or lesser degree. So all children, as they're growing up together, argue. And let's face it, the place where actually we find out about conflict and how to handle conflict, the safest place generally is the family. So I think that's the first thing to remember. It's when it escalates sort of out of control and it stops being your general riling for attention, or a little bit of sort of jealousy around he's got this and he's got that, that it can then start to escalate out of control. But I think it's useful to remember that it does happen in all families to a greater or lesser degree.
I think I'm just remembering when you're talking now, I think something that my mum did that was quite funny, but I think it kept us not arguing about this particular thing. She always used to dress us exactly the same. So anything she bought my sister, she bought me as well. So, but we would dress exactly the same for like years. So
and that's
we had a bit
really
of an
interesting.
identity crisis.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that can happen because, you know, obviously self-esteem and you know, our sense of identity, you know, is formed very much by our life experiences. You know, and one of the big things around sibling rivalry is the fact that if we feel that we're being treated exactly the same, and often you know, when I'm working with parents, they'll say, I don't understand where I've gone wrong, I treat them exactly the same. And actually that's the issue. We can't treat them exactly the same because each child is very different. They have different needs, they have different temperaments, you know, and all of that, you know, all of those things thrown into the mix are really important.
It's quite interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as Jodie and Holly were saying earlier, it depends on whereabouts you are sometimes in the family as well, you know, and we hear a lot about this middle child syndrome, you know, but, you know, sometimes it might be the middle child is the one that is sort of feeling it most because they're not getting as much attention as the older child and the younger child, and sort of feels that they're sort of stuck in the middle, you know. But it's not always the case that it's the middle child. Sometimes it can be the elder one that is, or the younger one that feels it the most.
Now, when should a parent start to worry? When do things start to become unhealthy, would you say?
I think when the parent is noticing things like a particular child is being bullied, victimised, they become very withdrawn, and the tension, the actual issue becomes the focus of the family rather than it being a healthy relationship. I think that's the time actually then we, you know, really start to worry. Because, I mean, there are things when it really goes wrong, sibling abuse, where it becomes very, very unhealthy, very, very dangerous to that particular younger or older sibling.
And what can parents do in that kind of situation, or if they are seeing that is becoming a bit too much?
I think starting right from grassroots, those foundation stones are so important to hope that you don't get there in the first place.
It's best to prevent it.
Absolutely, you know, I'm very much in sort of preventative. So to start sort of there, and then sort of, you know, I'll speak about, you know, what happens if it has escalated after that. But initially, you know, setting those foundation stones around, really important that each child has a little bit of focused attention. It's really difficult when you've got more than one child. But let's face it, when a new baby comes along and, you know, little Johnny has had mum to himself for, you know, a year or 2 years, 3 years. I love to use this as a metaphor. So you're happily married, aren't you? And let's just say, for example, that one day you and your husband happily married and you have a lovely wardrobe full of clothes and shoes and handbags. And then one day he comes home and says to you, Chrissy, I'd like to introduce you to, let's say, Jane. Jane's a little bit younger than you.
I don't like calling her Jane.
And Jane's going to live with us from now on, and I want you to be really nice to her and share all your clothes and all your handbags and all your shoes. And of course, you know, automatically we think, no way. So if you think about a child situation when a new baby comes into a family, we expect that child who's had this parent or parents all to themselves, and all of a sudden they've got to be nice to this person that actually, you know, is taking away perhaps the attention of the person who's the most focused in their life. So, you know, I think that's quite a good metaphor to sort of look at. But yeah, setting those foundation stones, making sure you have a little bit of one-on-one attention. Love languages as well are really, really important. Teaching our children how to deal with conflict in a healthy way, and talking about their feelings, you know, rather than stuffing them down, really important, so that they're able to verbalise things that they're not happy with. So that's sort of the preventative, if you like. When it's really escalated out of control, I think it's really important then actually to get in some professional help. So it might be family therapy, it might be...
And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because
absolutely
sometimes
not.
Parents are like, oh, I should be able to manage this. But things can escalate to a point where a parent can't. Things have gotten too serious, and there's no shame, there's nothing to talk about getting some help, some counselling.
And I think you said a really interesting thing there. Parents think, I should be able to cope. It's that should word. And behind that word is an expectation. We have an expectation that our children should get on, that I should be able to cope as a parent, that we should be a really happy family. And you know, that can really stop us and limit us from actually seeking the help and support that we might need. I worked with a family once actually where there was sibling rivalry, and we were working together sort of to get some things in place to help the family to move forward. And we started working on expectations, and what the parent said was she came from a family where she didn't have any siblings, so she was an only child. And so her expectation was, because she didn't have any siblings, that actually you would always get on as brothers and sisters. You would never fight, you would never argue, because that was her reality, her model of the world. And so actually when she experienced her own children, and they had something that she never had, which was, you know, someone to sort of play with and grow up with, she couldn't understand why they didn't get on. And so she had a huge expectation of her children always getting on. And when we started to unpick that, she realised that perhaps that was an unrealistic expectation to have of her children, to always get on, because we don't always get on with everybody.
It doesn't happen. I bet it's so difficult anyway, isn't it? Because I mean, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's amazing seeing her personality flourish at the moment. And in any social situation, she's so bold and forthright, and I love the personality she has. But it's hard to allow her to keep growing without trying to step on her toes and hold her back. So sometimes as a parent you look at a situation and you're like, should I be getting involved here, or should they just sort it out themselves? Do you get a lot of those kind of questions?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. And I think it's really important that actually we encourage parents and empower parents to help children to actually find the resolution themselves, teach them good resolution skills, you know, and try and teach them to be able to deal with conflict actually and relationships when they go wrong in a way that, you know, we get to a win-win situation. Because actually if we don't learn it in the family, how are we going to deal with relationships that go wrong outside of the family? How are we going to sort of deal with those, you know, conflicts when we come into them in everyday life? So,
and I think it is important as well, because sometimes in some cultures, it's like, especially parents don't like to ask for help, is going back to the point we said before, but then something like this parenting coaching that you do can be really sort of, you teach things that people don't even think about, wouldn't even consider before, just because they don't know. So even if it's, you know, coming to someone like you, or even reading up on things on the internet, just to get some knowledge.
Great books and stuff.
Yeah, because your way isn't necessarily the right way, and there's always room for improvement for any family, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, none of us are perfect parents, are we? None of us are perfect people. You know, it's about sort of learning all of the time, and being sort of open-minded enough to be able to sort of say, okay, well, perhaps if I do it differently, I might get a different result. You know, I think there's always a danger of thinking, right, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing things the same way all of the time, and then, you know, and then expect a different result. And often that doesn't happen. So reaching out and asking for help with a coach or, you know, a counsellor.
Like a fellow parent who see that the kids get along or something, and then just get some advice.
Because again, that's modelling, isn't it? We're modelling to our children that actually sometimes we need to ask for help when the problem is bigger than something we're able to cope with. So it's certainly not something that we ought to be ashamed of asking for help. I think it's actually something to be celebrated. And, you know, it's great modelling for our children to see that actually we can ask for help if we're struggling for about something.
Definitely. Alrighty, so we've almost reached the end. Just a question, how many children do you have? Is it just the one?
Oh, one child.
Oh, okay. You having more?
But in the future, possibly, who knows? But I mean, she herself as well, because I'm not with the mother anymore, and she has a younger sister, so it's interesting. When I spend time with her, she talks to me a lot lot about the younger sister.
Blended families is another big hot pot of potential.
Oh, we've got to do another show on that, I think, because we've run out of time. Thanks for your suggestion for another show. All right, guys, so thank you so much, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Great advice.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. We have reached the end of today's programme. But if you want more information about anything on the programme today, you can visit the website chrissybshow.tv. And if you'd like to email me personally, if you have an idea for a topic or you'd like some advice from me, you can email me on chris@chrissybshow.tv. But overall, try and get along, guys, because you don't know how long you're going to have with your siblings or your parents. Bye for now.